Welcome back to the High Court Report, your one-stop shop for Supreme Court coverage. Today, we dive into Berk versus Choy, where all 9 justices struck down an attempt to enforce in federal court Delaware's medical malpractice screening law. The decision resolves a conflict between state affidavit requirements and federal pleading standards. Justice Barrett wrote the majority opinion for 8 justices. Justice Jackson wrote a separate opinion that concurred in the judgment. This decision reinforces that federal courts follow federal rules, not state laws that may conflict with federal rules. All 9 justices agreed Delaware's law give way, though Justice Jackson split with the majority on its reasoning.
Here's the key facts. Harold Berk traveled to Delaware and fell from his bed, fracturing his ankle. Paramedics rushed him to BB Medical Center, where Dr. Wilson Choy treated him. The X-ray clearly showed a broken ankle, and Dr. Choy prescribed a protective boot.
Then things went wrong. Hospital staff forced Berk's injured leg into the boot, twisting his already fractured ankle. Despite this obvious trauma, Dr. Choy refused to order another X-ray immediately. Instead, he sent Berk home with instructions to stay off his ankle and return in 2 weeks.
At the follow-up appointment, the second X-ray revealed devastating news. Berk's ankle became severely deformed and needed surgery. The botched boot fitting turned a simple fracture into a surgical emergency. Berk sued Dr. Choy and BB Medical Center in federal court using diversity jurisdiction, meaning he could sue in federal court because he and the defendants lived in different states. But Delaware law created a potential obstacle.
Delaware law requires medical malpractice patients to file an affidavit of merit alongside their lawsuit. This affidavit must come from another medical professional who reviews the case and swears under oath that reasonable grounds exist to believe negligence occurred.
Berk requested a 60-day extension to find a doctor willing to provide this affidavit, a process that spawned separate litigation. But time ran out. Unable to secure the required medical opinion, Berk filed his medical records under seal instead.
The defendants pounced. They moved to dismiss Berk's entire lawsuit for failing to comply with Delaware's affidavit requirement. The district court agreed and dismissed the case. The Third Circuit affirmed.
The Supreme Court applied its established rule. When valid federal rules conflict with state laws, federal rules win. This analysis asks 2 simple questions. Does a federal rule answer the disputed question? If yes, does that rule exceed constitutional limits? If the rule stays within proper bounds, it governs.
Justice Barrett's majority found Delaware's law clashed directly with Federal Rule 8, which requires only a short and plain statement of the claim. The court explained that Rule 8 sets a ceiling on what plaintiffs must provide about their case's merits at the outset.
Delaware demanded more than allegations. It required actual evidence through the medical affidavit. This created different answers to the same question. What must a patient provide to avoid dismissal? Rule 8 says allegations suffice. Delaware law demands proof.
The court rejected arguments that because affidavits attach separately from complaints, no conflict existed. Justice Barrett explained that Rule 8's requirements logically exclude demanding additional merit-related information, whether included in the pleading itself or on attached papers.
Delaware's law also conflicted with Rule 12, which governs dismissal motions. Delaware requires judges to consider the affidavit's existence and sufficiency, materials outside the pleadings, when deciding whether to dismiss cases. Rule 12 generally forbids such considerations without converting the motion to summary judgment and allowing discovery. The defendants argued Rule 11 created a loophole. That rule states pleadings need not be verified, unless a rule or statute specifically states otherwise. They claimed Delaware's statute qualified as such an exception. The justices disagreed. Rule 11 governs attorney conduct and requires lawyers to certify they have reasonable basis for their legal arguments. It addresses professional responsibility, not screening mechanisms like Delaware's merit review system. The rule simply acknowledges that some contexts require verification. It does not incorporate every state law demanding additional documentation. Justice Jackson concurred in the judgment but disagreed with the majority's Rule 8 analysis. She found the conflict lay with Rules 3 and 12 instead. Jackson reasoned that Rule 3, which establishes how civil actions commence, conflicted with Delaware's precondition to filing. She noted the majority created an inconsistency by claiming the affidavit was both outside the pleadings for Rule 12 purposes and part of pleading requirements for Rule 8 purposes. Despite this methodological disagreement, Jackson reached the same bottom line. Delaware's law cannot be enforced in federal court because it conflicts with valid federal rules.
This decision protects patients nationwide from state laws that make federal court access harder than federal rules allow. Many states have enacted similar screening requirements, arguing they reduce frivolous lawsuits and lower malpractice insurance costs.
The court's ruling means these state requirements cannot apply in federal diversity cases. Patients who meet federal court's basic requirements, citizenship diversity, and amount in controversy, can proceed under federal standards alone.
The decision reinforces that federal courts must follow federal procedures, even when applying state substantive law. States cannot circumvent federal procedural protections by labeling their requirements as substantive screening mechanisms.
For medical malpractice patients, this removes a significant barrier to federal court access. Finding medical professionals willing to review cases and provide merit affidavits can be difficult and expensive. The decision eliminates this hurdle in federal court.
For defendants, the ruling removes an early dismissal tool but does not eliminate substantive protections. They can still file motions to dismiss and motions for summary judgment if plaintiffs cannot prove their cases. They retain full protections under applicable state substantive law. They simply cannot invoke state procedural requirements that conflict with federal rules.
For the broader legal system, the decision clarifies the boundary between state and federal authority in diversity jurisdiction. It confirms that federal procedural rules govern completely in federal court, regardless of state policy preferences behind conflicting requirement. A few other points on the case implications.
First, federal procedural rules override conflicting state requirements, even when the state law serves legitimate policy goals like reducing frivolous litigation.
Second, Rule 8's short and plain statement standard sets a meaningful ceiling on initial pleading requirements that courts cannot circumvent through additional documentation demands.
Third, unanimous agreement on the result, despite methodological disagreements, shows the strength of federal procedural uniformity principles.
Fourth, the decision increases access to federal courts for plaintiffs who satisfy basic diversity jurisdiction requirements, preventing states from imposing additional procedural barriers.
Thanks for listening to today's High Court Report episode. Follow, rate, subscribe, and share the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts. Follow on LinkedIn for written summaries. Just search the High Court Report. Questions about this case? Reach out via LinkedIn or email. Talk to you soon.